Lesson number 64 is about domain and the additive property of inequality. Our first question tells us to graph, and we have to graph x is greater than 2. Well, we know how to do that, but then it says d is equal to real numbers. Now this d means domain, and domain just means the possible answers, or answers possible. Now in this, the answers that are possible are all real numbers. So that includes rational numbers and irrational numbers. So if x is greater than 2, well, x is greater than 2, got our number line, it's greater than 2, it's not equal to 2, so we leave our circle open. If x is greater than 2, we're just going to the right. Since it includes all real numbers, rational and irrational numbers, everything is included in our data set. So we've got a bold line, a continuous line, or we could call it a ray, we should call it a ray, going to the right. Let's look at another one. Let's graph. X is not greater than or equal to 3, and our domain is only integers. So if x is not greater than or equal to 3, that must mean x is less than 3. So if x is less than 3, we're going to have an open circle. But this time we're only looking at integers. That's our domain. The answer is possible. So integers, well, they're just whole numbers, and they're opposites. So there can't be anything between the whole numbers and their opposites in our answers. So if x is less than 3, and we're only looking at integers, we must get a 2, a 1, a 0, and we just keep going. We just keep going to the left. Now, I'm going to keep going to the left, only plotting the integers, nothing between them, because they're not integers in between. And at some point, we're going to come to an end. But we would keep following this pattern. And the way we show the pattern continuing is we take our arrowhead and we bold it in. Now, for you, when you're doing these problems, you could do your number line like this. 3 is our most important value. We've got a number line. We're going to have one smaller, so 3, we're going to have 2 and 4. And for these problems where we have a restricted domain, let's have one more value out there, 5 and 1. The way you can show your answer, open circle on the 3. We can't raise up off the number line anymore because we're not including everything in the middle. So we're going to have a point graphed on 2, we're going to have a point graphed on 1, and then we're going to bold the head of our arrow. And we've got our final answer. Key here is not to graph anything between our integers. Next, let's graph. X is greater than or equal to -1. The domain is equal to reals. And reals, that's just short, that's an abbreviation for real numbers. That includes rational and irrational. So x is greater than or equal to -1. We've got a closed circle this time because it's greater than or equal to -1. And if the domain is rational and irrational numbers, that must mean everything. All of our real numbers. So we've got them all filled in by having our solid ray heading to the right. We've got another. X is less than or equal to -1, but this time the domain is only equal to positive integers. So those are our only possible answers. X is less than or equal to -1. We know that's going to be a closed circle on -1. And the domain is only equal to positive integers. So 0 is 0. 0 is our origin. 0 is not positive. So we could only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing in between, because nothing in between is an integer. And we'll just keep this pattern going till we get to our arrowhead. Then we'll bold in our arrowhead, and that just says we continue this pattern. Again, key here, to get the problem right, is looking at what your domain is. Here's our final problem. Here we have x minus 3 is greater than or equal to -5, and our domain is integers. Now in this, we want to know what x is going to be. So we need to add 3 to both sides. We want to isolate x. So that's all we have to do, is undo the subtraction of 3 by adding 3. So we get x is greater than or equal to, and then we have negative 5 plus 3, that must be negative 2. So if x is greater than or equal to negative 2, we've got a closed circle on negative 2. X is greater than or equal to it, so we're going to the right, and our domain is restricted to only integers. So we've got negative 1, 0, and we'll go following this pattern all the way until we get to our arrowhead. If you have less tick marks, I'd suggest that, like we had in our previous example. Make sure you've got at least 2 numbers to the right and the left of your most important number in the middle there, and then you've shown your answer. Lesson practice will be on page 263. Make sure you've got your notes complete, and I'll see you during our next class.